From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, June the 15th, 2021. Israel's new government continues to welcome good wishes from leaders of countries near and far, including from the Kingdom of Bahrain, where Prime Minister Prince Salman bin Hamad tweeted, "I offer congratulations to Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid on the formation of a new government in Israel, and look forward to continuing efforts towards greater prosperity, stability, and peace in the region." And from the United Arab Emirates, Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed congratulated Lapid, his new counterpart in Israel, tweeting that the two discussed mutual cooperation and the Abraham Accords, the normalization of ties between the UAE and of Bahrain, during a phone call yesterday. And Lapid met yesterday for an official ceremony with outgoing Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, who welcomed Lapid to the new position, which Lapid will serve in for the next 2 years before taking over as Prime Minister from Bennett. Bennett, of course, was sworn in with the new government on Sunday as premier, replacing Benjamin Netanyahu after his 12 consecutive years in power. Netanyahu, meanwhile, has promised to do what he can to bring down the new government, continuing to claim that it is based on what he called fraud and power seeking, referring apparently to coalition agreements made with the left and with an Arab party. In a meeting with the opposition yesterday, Netanyahu said, "We have a very strong opposition and we will work together to overthrow this fraudulent government very quickly." Some 5,000 people, including several far-right members of Israel's Knesset, took part in the traditional flag march tonight in Jerusalem. The annual procession was originally scheduled for May the 10th to mark Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, celebrating the reunification of the city after the Six-Day War. But it was stopped short when terror group Hamas fired rockets at the capital. The march traditionally passes through and shuts down Arab areas in the Old City of Jerusalem, which is seen by some as provocation. Tonight's route, though, avoided some of the more problematic areas. Israel's new foreign minister weighed in on the march tonight after reports of racist anti-Arab slogans chanted by some of its participants, reportedly by a group of Jewish extremist youth. Yair Lapid said he agreed that the march was given permission to take place, but he condemned those using it to express hate towards Arab Israelis and Palestinians. Lapid tweeted, "The fact that there are extremist elements for whom the Israeli flag represents hatred and racism is abominable and unforgivable." Terror group Hamas had threatened to reignite the conflict with Israel if the march was held, and apparently urged Palestinians to go to the Old City to confront it. Israel police presence was very high in preparation. There were some clashes reported with Palestinian protesters. Meanwhile, a number of incendiary balloons were sent by Hamas from Gaza into southern Israel today, setting some 20 fires. Israel has warned Hamas that it will respond to any attacks, be it arson devices or rocket fire. The faculty union of CUNY, the City University of New York, passed a resolution last week which called Israel an apartheid state and accused Israel of, quote-unquote, the massacre of Palestinians during the recent conflict with Hamas, and called on the United States administration to stop all aid to Israel. The Allgemeiner reports that the resolution was overwhelmingly approved 84-34 this past Thursday. Brooklyn College history professor Casey Johnson told the Allgemeiner of what he called the almost comically one-sided resolution. That, he said, doesn't once mention Hamas or its rockets. Johnson told the New York Post that the union is obsessed with finding ways to condemn Israel, while ignoring atrocities taking place elsewhere. At Harvard, over 850 students, faculty, and other affiliates of the university signed a statement supporting Israel's right to self-defense against Hamas and the right of the Jewish people to self-determination, also condemning the rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes and calling for civil discourse when discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The letter was circulated on May the 28th by the Harvard Israel Initiative. It stated in part, "We are tremendously saddened by the events of the last 2 weeks, starting with the tragic loss of innocent Israeli and Palestinian life, followed by a frightening spike in reported anti-Semitic attacks across the country and the globe." Adding, "When we see the state of Israel, the homeland of the Jewish people and the world's only Jewish state, being demonized, delegitimized, or held to a standard to which no other country is held, we recognize and name this as anti-Semitism." And the bipartisan resolution from Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen and Republican Senator James Langford, co-sponsored by over 70 other senators, condemning anti-Semitism, passed in the Senate yesterday. Rosen, who is Jewish, shared her remarks from the Senate floor, calling for action and a united stance amidst the recent surge in anti-Semitic incidents.
We must ensure that our elected leaders, Democrats and Republicans, are resolute in affirming that there is zero tolerance for anti-Semitism. We must honor the words of George Washington, who wrote to the Jewish community of Rhode Island in 1790 that America, and I quote, "gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance," unquote. Which is why I urge the Senate to immediately take up my bipartisan resolution condemning the recent anti-Semitic incidents unconditionally and unequivocally.
Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Tuesday, June the 15th at 7 o'clock. It's from the Aleph Bet. At 7:35, IDF soldiers remember the Gaza war. At 8, Lieutenant Colonel Yochai Guiski examines the wider implications of the latest chapter in the decades-long conflict between Israel and its enemies, especially vis-à-vis Hezbollah in Lebanon. That's with Benjamin Anthony in a program of the MirYam Institute. At 9, Mark Golub sits down with Avi Goldwasser for part 2 of Lchayim, where Goldwasser discusses the degree to which anti-Israel is veiled anti-Semitism. At 10, a look at Israel in the media with Israeli Consul for Media Affairs in New York, Almog Eligis. And then at 10:30, a replay of the congressional tribute to the Anti-Defamation League's Director Emeritus Abe Foxman. And coming up next, Shachar Azani speaks with Times of Israel's political correspondent Chaviv Rettigur about Israel's new Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, June the 15th, 2021. I'm Teisha Bader. Stay healthy. Stay well.